Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll wait for a couple of minutes for everybody to join, and we'll get it started. Thanks for your patience. All right, let's kick it off. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody joining us from around the world today. My name is Samar Kamal. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Mine. And thank you again for joining. We're excited to have hopefully a great session for you. I hope that within a half hour, you can leave and learn a thing or two about data privacy and the experience one of our customers has had with us using our platform. Today, joining me today is Kobi Nissan, our co-founder and chief product officer. Hi, Kobi. I think you're still on mute.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Kobi. And we're honored to also have one of our customers, Philip Mason from Minim. Hi, Philip.
How y'all doing? Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you. Thank you. We're a little bit of the agenda today. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges and the issues that Philip had at Mine. We'll talk about the background and his shop, really, why he really needed a data privacy platform. We'll jump in also to talk about our data mapping stack. We'll also continue from a webinar we had last month, I think. And we'll do a real demo. Kobi will walk us through the actual solution. There is a hard Q&A, but do please feel free to drop your questions in the comment section here. We'll try to get to them as they come in. As I mentioned, we did have a big announcement last month around what we refer to as continuous data classification and smart data sampling. That's really the foundation and where you kick off your data privacy program. We will touch again on that for a little bit, but I do urge you to go back or we'll drop in the YouTube link for that webinar. And so that will give you the proper start, if you will. If you are not familiar, we will touch again on it, but we do go in depth in that webinar that I welcome you to see if you haven't. So before really kicking it off, Philip, if you could just give us a little bit of background. You've been an industry veteran for so many years. If you could just walk us through your experience and a little bit about Minim, for folks that are not familiar with the company.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Once again, my name is Philip Mason. I'm an attorney and a CPA. I also have the International Association of Privacy Professionals, CIPPE, and U.S. designations, as well as their CIPT and CIPM ones. I am also an IAPP Fellow of Information Privacy. And also recently obtained that nifty new privacy engineering certification from Data Protocol, based off Nishant Bajaria's book, Data Privacy, a run book for engineers that some of your privacy attendees may very well be familiar with. I am indeed currently the Vice President of Compliance and the Data Protection Officer for Minim Inc. Minim was founded in 2017, and our mission is to help people do more and live better with connectivity. While we are probably best known as the developer and producer of Motorola's home networking devices through an exclusive global license with them, our primary focus is the development of an open source solution to personal network management via our Minim mobile app. And currently that application allows users to manage their home network like an IT pro. connecting and monitoring all Wi-Fi enabled devices in one place, such as offers advanced threat detection, malware scales, network isolation, automated firmware upgrades, and parental controls, because you need to keep an eye on those kids. I will say that. Prior to that, I was an associate director for fund operations and compliance for a leading global insurance organization. And before that, I was the director of due diligence for a large multi-billion-dollar investment advisory firm. Well, I am flattered and honored to be here to participate in this webinar. In the second half of last year, I interviewed about a half a dozen of the largest data governance privacy providers, and mine PrivacyOps was the one that I helped our organization select. Extremely impressed with both their platform and associated technology.
Amazing. We're humbled to have you. Thank you, Philip, and congrats for an amazing tenure, really, and career. If we could, continue on that path, Philip, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that you had, within your shop and, the data privacy, how you've seen, if you will. We know there's, SaaS applications have really changed the game, if you will, for data privacy professionals. So if you could just walk us through some of the challenges that you've seen, firsthand at your shop.
I think two big challenges that all organizations face in this day and age, among all the other big challenges organizations face, is but the two I think I'm going to focus on today is first dealing with the whole area of the innovation when it comes to engineering. Things used to be much more top down, and when it came to engineering, and what do I mean by that? I mean, you'd get a mandate from the C-suite, which determined the product roadmap. That roadmap in turn would ID specific requirements for products and features. Engineers would in turn have to build those products with those features, and afterwards, hopefully, the product would be released. Nowadays, things are much, much more bottoms up. What do I mean by that? It means all those crazy creative folks in engineering and development have a license essentially to innovate and create products in a much more non-linear fashion, which thus facilitates multiple projects at various stages of development at any one time. And while this certainly spurs innovation, incredible innovation, no doubt, it also frankly spurs incredible challenges when trying to manage all these projects from a privacy and security point of view. Because the buzzword of privacy by design and default, when you have various projects in various stages, it is absolutely challenging to keep on top of these things in this new day and age from a bottoms up perspective. So that's issue one. Issue two is organizations not only have to ensure that they're accounting for their structured data, which is like the raw data obtained from customers, third parties, data providers, which is subsequently organized into your various operational real-time analytic and cloud stores. But you also because it's the majority of data you receive, is unstructured data. And what is unstructured data? That is, data you get from employee downloads, the data in laptops, Google Docs, emails, and Slacks. And once again, that is the majority of data. And as a bit of an aside, that was one thing I thought Mine PrivacyOps really differentiated themselves from their competitors in this space, was their ability to identify and help categorize such unstructured data. So given the challenge with bottoms-up engineering and tracking structured and unstructured data, how can you try to organizations wrap their hands around dealing with these items? You need an overarching data governance privacy platform like Mine PrivacyOps. And why is that? Because if you don't have such a platform in place, it can lead to inadvertent privacy violations, poor data quality, possibly breaches, internal and external, and hopefully, that is something we all want to try to avoid. Whereas a robust platform can facilitate privacy control data minimization, reduce storage costs, ingrain privacy controls, enhance data tracking, mitigate breaches, improve data quality, and perhaps most importantly, ingrain privacy controls in a mindset. Because if you have the overarching program in place, even if the biggest players in your organization, the biggest personnel aren't per se dealing with this hands-on, they're certainly going to get the reports and the analytics that such an overarching platform is going to provide. And so when everyone is kind of having to touch upon it and deal with it, once again, privacy becomes much more of a mindset. And I think that is something very much that the Mine PrivacyOps platform does. And so stepping back, what a strong governance platform does is foundationally help a company organize and centralize a centralized and coherent data classification system. So a common data classification can be something like public, internal, confidential, and restricted. Such a foundational classification system enables your organization to create policies to protect data at scale, and that at scale is critical. The days of trying to do this manually or just via basic spreadsheet or databases, that's over. And as a bit of an aside, when it comes to implementing your data classification system, that's 4 tiers, in my opinion, you absolutely need to apply it uniformly and without exception to all data throughout your organization. In other words, organizations shouldn't have silos to begin with, but certainly you don't want, say, your accounting group classifying data one way, your DevOps classifying another, HR classifying another, legal. That's not going to allow you to leverage this platform at scale. And it also can be confusing as heck when you get right down to it. So they all should be, this data classification system needs to be applied uniformly across your organization. So in order to implement such a data classification system accurately and at scale, you're going to have to use automation to label and tag all that data, all that structured and unstructured data, in order to generate what is ultimately going to be your holy grail, your data inventory. Because once you have that data inventory is accomplished, the tag data will contain information about its privacy risk. It's, once again, public, internal, confidential, and restricted. And then you can then build privacy tools to protect the data in line with that respective risk. Because obviously public data is not going to be treated nearly the same way, or from a privacy control point of view, as restricted data. And that actually makes it far more efficient. So, and once again, that is what I thought the Minim PrivacyOps platform and technology excels at being able to classify it and using automation to generate the inventory, which then provides you with all these, terrific visual data mappings of where data is flowing and going to and fro, and all the surprises that I guarantee will arise once you implement a Minim PrivacyOps platform, because you'll be surprised at what you see and find and locate. But it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, very good, Phil. And I hear you, the keywords that you're mentioning, frustrating and overwhelming, that's what we have been hearing lately. I think a lot of it, some of it is coming from inside the data privacy, group and people who are responsible of it. Some are coming and are responsibilities for teams that are, outside of your responsibility, if you will. As you mentioned, DevOps and engineering and so on. Kobi, you speak to prospects and customers all the time. Any thoughts on, some of the pain points that Philip mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. So I put them down, and I think, it was very interesting to me because, I think, Philip, for the first time, it was, you made it like super clear. The first bottleneck that we have seen at the beginning, when we first embarked on this journey of building Minim PrivacyOps, was what you mentioned at the beginning. The fact that the industry, you call it innovation. In my words, in my own words, it will be, we moved from like the system of record to an ecosystem of record. It's like super difficult to maintain and keep track of where all the data is. So the first bottleneck was, that privacy professional really needed to kind of go and run through manual processes, ask around and fill out those spreadsheets in order to map the data that they have. That was the first bottleneck. And then you touched upon data governance and the privacy controls, because the next step was that once you have those data, you discovered the data map with Minim PrivacyOps, with another tool, even if you spend a year building it yourself manually. Once you have this data map in place, now you need to audit through it. Now you need to go through all this information and digest all of it. So how that became like the new bottleneck, like how can we help you cater for and kind of make sense out of this entire data map in order to set up the true privacy rules and privacy controls in place. So this is like what I took from that, and it feels like those are the real main challenges that we hear as well from other clients that we speak to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Thanks, Kobi. Let's jump in right into this. As I mentioned, folks, we spoke a little bit about, some of the first and second pillar that you see here from the right, consent management and DS handling. Kobi will touch on a little bit on that, and a little bit of that foundation we spoke about. But again, feel free to go back into that webinar to specifically, if you're interested, on other modules, if you will. But here we'll talk about some of the automation, minimizing the data footprint, that Philip talked about. Kobi, all you.
All right, perfect. So this slide essentially kind of describes in very high level the value of the offering that Mine PrivacyOps kind of provides. So as Summer mentioned, the first two modules on the right side, the DSR handling and the consent management, are more the operational side, the client-facing modules. So we'll put that for a separate discussion. From the data mapping perspective, this is the pains and the purpose of this webinar. We split it into 5 different pillars. So we have the 2 green ones at the bottom of it. This is like the foundation of the privacy program. This is kind of the first pain point that we described. How can you map everything, identify where data is, and identify why, or classify what data you have inside each one of those data sources. So with those green pillars, what you do is you essentially build your privacy map, your data map, in an automated way. So that's like the first step. Everything you see on the top of it is how we help the organization make sense out of it. So the operational pillar is where we take the data map, we apply cutting-edge technology, machine learning and context analysis in order to really understand what's going on in the map and give focus points, create heat maps for the privacy professionals to really focus on different areas within the organization. For example, let's imagine you have some systems that hold highly sensitive information, and all of a sudden you have a peak or something really changed with employee access to those systems. There you have the access control, for example. So we can do that on various levels of privacy risks. That's the third layer. Then we are going one step forward, and once you have more understanding of your data map, and now we are going to help you build your auditable reports. So the RoPA, the DPIA, the data transfer. The idea here is to help you justify the processing and the storage of these specific data types in these specific data sources. Once you have that, and I believe the audience might agree with me, is when you set up a RoPA, you can actually extract or derive out of it internal policies. For example, let's imagine that we have a customer support processing activity that uses this platform and is processing contacts and, I don't know, and addresses, and that's it. You can derive from it the other way around, saying, for these processing activities, we do not want to allow any PCI information to reside within this processing activity. And then we can apply those policies in to make sure that everything in the organization is adhering to this specific processing activity that you set in place. Anytime you see a policy violation, privacy team will get the alert there. So either you justify the new business process or you fix it. So that's kind of how we think about when you go on the 3 top pillars there. All right. So now we are going like pillar by pillar. The first step is to map all the data sources, understanding where data is. In order to do that, what we came across was that it is never good enough to connect with a single source. Connecting with multiple sources will give you the overall understanding, and we need to be creative about it. We talked about an ecosystem of records. So connecting to a website in order to get the authoritative systems, connected to the single sign-on in order to get the ones that you are actively using, IT is monitoring, and leveraging with an email technology that will allow you to get 95% coverage, including shadow IT. We don't want to miss out on that, including historical information, so the organization is truly in control. Next slide. All right. Now, once we have this list, we have the mapping of all the places where data is. the classic thing to do is to go ahead in the yellow box there and go ahead and open those doors, understand what data you have inside, classify the data with a scan. So connect with integration and run a scan. However, doing that is something that sometimes not an effective process. Sometimes for organization, they will find 300, 400, 500 systems in their tech stack. It doesn't make always sense to connect with a full scan on all of them. So what Minim have created are 3 types of options in order for the organization to take a decision and leverage on the technology to the best possible context for the organization. So as Philip mentioned before, if you are using an unstructured data source, yes, it makes sense to connect with a data classification, full-blown technology, and find everything that you have inside. Sometimes if you have SaaS platforms that are more direct, more specific, maybe it makes more sense to leverage on machine learning that will give you the context-based analysis, right? Rather than doing the integration. And here I want to refer you to the previous webinar that we have done. We kind of drill down on those aspects, the context-based and the smart sampling. The point being is that classifying of data is a very difficult task to do, and we need to be innovative around it as well. Finding the right solution to every specific use case. This is what I'm demonstrating here. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so once we have this data map, now we are talking about the 3rd layer. So what we want to do is to provide the organization with some heat maps that will allow the organization to really understand where to start, where to begin with when we start auditing the data. So you have now the systems, you have the data that you have inside of them, then Minim Privacy AI will go in, give the context, and build them around privacy risk in order to give you the context that you need. We will show you this inside the product in a second. This is the 4th pillar. When we take this information and we are building a baseline for you in order to set up the auditable reports, the RoPA, the DPIA, and so on and so forth. Minim will not replace the decision-making of the privacy professionals, of course not. It will just give you a baseline. We leverage the technology that we can bring in order to give you a baseline that will make the job much faster, and basically giving superpowers to the privacy teams. Once we have all of those together, now we can really put the policies into place. We have the RoPA, we have the DPIA, and then the PrivacyOps can actually derive from it internal policies and make sure that once something is changing, because organization is a dynamic thing, we can reflect back on a privacy violation, as we call it, and then the organization will be able to kind of go ahead, making sure that they are in governance. Samuel, I think you are on mute.
Thank you, Kobi. I'm going to stop sharing and give it to you for the demo.
All right.
In the meantime, I saw a question coming in from Paul. Kobi, if we could address fairly quickly, in that heat map you just showed us, how much of that information is it actually security information, would you say?
So it was.
A question for you.
So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the heat map that you showed us, with all that risk information in it, how much of that information is actually security information that we would cover?
Yeah, so what we have done here, and we are adding those more and more privacy risks as we are going. As you can see here, we added the first most common ones. Basically, we have the cyber posture rating of a system versus the data sensitivity level of the data that you have inside. We map that against the heat map. We have the thresholds. Of course, this is something that you can configure, but we will give you the best practices there. We are doing that with access controls of employees. If you have a system with highly sensitive information and then employees, too many employees, or we saw a spike of employees connected to it, we will reflect it on a heat map. And the same thing is going with the usage. So instead of you going through 300, 400 systems, we are flagging back the ones that are actively being used, leveraging the Minim Privacy AI.
Thank you.
All right. So in the demo, I'm going to kind of quickly review it and demonstrate how we go from pillar by pillar. So first step, running the data sources discovery. As I mentioned before, you kind of connect to multiple sources. We can demonstrate here the email technology real quick. We connected to the organization, map the entire list of employees, took in the employee. We know the organizational unit, and then we can see the data sources that this employee is connected with. So the organization is actually in control of who is connected to what, and providing a full understanding to the privacy team of the data map. Employee versus, this is the access control, employee versus the system. On top of that, once we've created the full list of data sources, now we can look at it from the lens of the system. And all of a sudden, we can take a look and see the number of the employees that are connected to it. We have the active employees. Sometimes we have an inactive employee that we need to check. And sometimes the systems will also, this is thanks to the email technology, it will flag back the power users. The system is able to identify the type of interaction that the user had with the system and flag back to the privacy team, hey, these are the people that you want to talk to if you have any concern, anything whatsoever that you want to ask around the specific system in this case. The next step is to open the doors, is to try to understand what data you have inside. So as I mentioned before, there are multiple methods. Method number one, you can go ahead, connect an integration, run a scan. Once you have the scan in place, we are scanning over 160 different data types across any privacy frameworks, PII, GDPR special, PHI, PCI information. And then if you need to do some research and investigate further, we will provide also with a URL so you can drill down. The system does not keep any information inside. It means just giving the pointer where the data is. And if you have access to the system, you will be able to see that. If not, you can take it internally and make sure that you have covered this for research perspective. Now, that's one option, one method. The other one is to leverage again on the Mind Privacy AI. Those are the yellow things here. Mind Privacy AI will provide you with, once, let's imagine that you have a system that the organization is using. Then we are saying, let's go ahead and analyze the legal documents, all the public documents of the system, the technology, the technical documents of the system, the features, and also the your organization in terms of the size, shape, and form. And then the Mind AI will be able to provide you with the suggestions or a baseline of what type of data you are processing within the system. Now you have two methods in order to classify data. One is with Mind Privacy AI. This is, of course, an estimate. The other one is with full integration, and the organization can balance between the two. We run the same thing for the processing activities as well, in order to justify why are you using a specific platform. So that, for example, we have here an HR platform. So Mind Privacy AI was able to provide me with the reasons or the processing activities that we are probably doing with them. And with that, we are shortening the time. This is what I mentioned before, putting superpowers in the hands of the privacy team. We are shortening the time of the hustle of going to the business, try to do the investigation, filling those questionnaires. We are leveraging technology in order to cater for that. However, we make sure that we keep the decision and the log of decision in the hand of the privacy team. Once we have done that, we can go ahead, and this is what I demonstrated before. We can have those heat maps. So the team can focus on the right places. Here are the actively used systems versus the questionable necessities, and then you can start catering for building your inventory. And then the last point, once you have those suggestions of processing activities, we can build a baseline for your record of processing activities. This includes the activity itself, the DPIA in case needed. Not in all cases it is needed, including the risks that are associated with it. We are pulling out standard risk as a recommendation. And finally, the data flow in order to cater for the data transfer. So everything here is done as a baseline for the privacy team, so you can leverage on that and speed up the process. The final point is that once you have all this in place, you can start setting up the policies. For example, here, we don't want to allow for any PCI information to reside within these systems. I simply click Save. And then when we go back to the dashboard, scroll down in the data classification area, I will get flagged of policy violation and be able to go ahead and see where they're coming from. So with that, I think I'll pause because we are about out of time. So over to you, Summer.
Very good. Thank you, Kobi. Yeah, a record time demo. Thank you. I am going to ask Philip, as a customer and a user of this, you've used other tools, what was your first impressions and, so far your opinion with the portal?
I find it very user-friendly and intuitive. I find the graphical interface very almost pleasant to use. And I also this is unsolicited, I find the customer support with you guys to be, outstanding. That questions are readily addressed, promptly addressed. And as someone who, I'm certified in some of the other platform providers, I can promise other folks out there that if you're not happy with the customer service or think it can be better, I promise you it can be. And I really can't recommend the Minim PrivacyOps professionals here enough. It really is an outstanding system. I wasn't even familiar with them until about 6 months ago myself. I heard their CEO, Gal Ringer, on a Serious Privacy podcast where I was extremely impressed with how well he handled himself under some very, very aggressive questioning. And that stuck into me. And then when it was a review on the G2 website of you guys, and I, once again, really hadn't heard of you a whole lot, but you were ranked #1 in virtually every category. And I said, well, I'm not familiar with them, but considering they're getting top scores, I probably should be. And so, I think I can speak, though all the opinions expressed here are mine and don't represent Minim PrivacyOps or Minim Inc. I do think I can speak for Minim in the sense that everyone that interacted with you guys throughout the whole vetting process came away extremely impressed, not just by the product, but also, once again, by the people who presented it and their acumen in doing so.
Incredible. Philip. Yeah, very humbling. Thank you, Philip. We will not disappoint you even after the process and serving you. So I appreciate it. A quick question came in, Kobi, to you from Bennett. Can the data be mapped to the organization structure to drill down? I think there was a question before this. I want to be fair.
The answer is yes, by the way.
Yeah, please.
No, the answer is yes. It's a very simple answer. It can be mapped to the organizational structure, and we show it on a per department level.
Very good. Thanks. Philip, question to you. Can you walk us through the evaluation process? What else have you gone through, to ensure that this is the right solution for you?
Let me see if I have a gazillion slides open, but one of them I actually think was yes, actually have it. And into the chat, I'm going to drop a link of what an article that evaluated you guys from the fall of 2022. It was an outstanding article. I happen to know the author of it. And so that's one reason it brought to my attention. But it involved, I would say, once again, I met with at least a half a dozen. And if you look at the article that is linked to, you'll notice some of the biggest ones in there, where they rank. And once again, if you've been in this space enough, I doubt you're surprised by some of the ranks, particularly when it comes to customer service. And that's why if you aren't familiar with someone like a Minim PrivacyOps, I think it really behooves you to give them an opportunity to present to you, because I do think you'll be very surprised at how easy it is to onboard them and to use them effectively. So it involved at least 3 meetings with each one, in group meetings with each one. And you know, having done this for a while, just going through, you know, concerns and issues and questions. Some did not have some of the applications, you know, interfaces that we needed. So, you know, I can't just view it from a privacy point of view. My view was to get a system that the company could utilize effectively to make ultimately efficient business decisions. You know, you can be super private right out of business, but, you know, the goal is to be both privacy, but also to enhance the data so it's effective from a business decision-making point of view. So I wanted to have a system in place that would allow the technology folks and the accounting folks and the HR folks and the web, you know, master, that they could all use this relatively painlessly. And this is another point I will emphasize to other privacy professionals out there. If the system you are using you find is cumbersome and unwieldy to you, imagine what it is like to everyone else that may have to interact with that. Here's a hint: it's not. They're not going to interact with it. And I want to circle that back to the whole privacy mindset, in that if you're using a system that people could at least tolerate and hopefully view as effectively and easy to use, they will use it. And that, once again, that permeates a privacy culture and mindset throughout your organization. So, but there were one company we dealt with didn't handle unstructured data, I thought, very well. So this day and age, you have to have that. Once in the modules some of the modules I actually found your CMP platform also, you know, very impressive and effective and easy to use. So meetings, group meetings with my company and the other providers, several phone calls individually I would have with providers, you know, voicing concerns and issues. And ultimately, I felt Minim PrivacyOps really just, you know, wanted our business and worked hard to get it, and have seemed committed. And my experience thus far onboarding have been very, you know, committed to ensuring that, you know, we're getting our systems up to speed in an extremely timely fashion. And I'll refer people back to that article link. Check out how quickly you can get your system on board. So I just strongly encourage, don't just stick with something because you have inertia, or you haven't put in a piecemeal system. I would strongly urge you to consider you guys from a comprehensive and an ease of use platform.
Thank you, Phil. Very humbling. Thank you. Kobi, you had something.
I just wanted to say, you know, Philip, you know, really humbled, and thank you for the kind words. It means a lot to us as a company. But I just wanted to tell to the audience that we are inviting anyone to run through a free POC, see it for yourselves, and play around with the system. We believe that, you know, it's more than words. Is see it in action, and then take the decision. And if you decide that it's not for you, no harm. It's an experience anyway. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kobi. Thank you, Philip, and everybody that has joined us. I know we're over time. We'll apologize. If you have any other questions and you'd like to, you know, take Kobi's offer, feel free to reach out to sales@saymind.com, and we'll be happy to speak with you. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.